If you've had any cryptid encounters that you'd like shared on here, email me at jttosstories@gmail.com. Story 1. On Monday, October 18th, 2021, midday, I took my 7 and 2.5-year-old sons to a state park 1.5 miles up the road from my house. Rocks State Park, Hidden Valley area. The park is small. 4 parking spots and a half-mile trail that follows a creek. The trail ends at a fork in the creek with a beachhead about 20 feet long. 6 people would be a crowd. Both of my sons are familiar with the park, as it's in the rotation of 3 parks we choose from to go on a little hike once a week. The trail is moderate with some inclines, natural obstacles, and occasional narrowing due to a lack of maintenance. My eldest son is comfortable being 30 to 50 feet ahead of me while I pace my youngest. Nothing's out of the ordinary. Just a normal hike. My eldest reaches the beachhead 15 to 20 seconds before us. We approach the creek beach, and my youngest is on my left, starting to mess with rocks and throwing them in the creek. My oldest is 10 to 15 feet to my right, messing around, throwing rocks in the water. I bend down to cuff my pant leg and hear a blood-curdling scream from my oldest. I look up at him, and he is screaming, falling backwards, feverishly kicking his legs. I follow his line of sight to across the creek. Perched on a large flat rock was an animal that I could not understand. It was no more than 20 to 25 feet away. Its dimensions seemed so large, it looked as if it could leap the creek in one stride. A barrel chest with clear defined pectoral muscles, shoulders, and biceps, no different than a man, just a lot larger. Bulging eyes, and a stubby snout like a hyena. It looked as if it was in a sprinter's starting position, not an animal on all fours. Its thighs and hind end were noticeably large. The mass of this animal was unnatural. The ears faced forward with hair tufts on the side and tops of the head. The face looked as if it was on high alert, similar to when your dog has quick head movements because you're getting ready to throw a ball. It kept switching between my son screaming, falling backwards into trail running away, and me screaming, picking up my other son. As I'm frantically trying to get between it and my first son, it almost looked as if it was in a lunging position, that or backing up. My perspective was head on before turning into the trail. I get to him, and we're out of direct sight. I yell at son number 1 to run. The weirdest thing would happen. The 7-year-old would start sprinting and crying, and after 30 feet, he would turn around in a complete daze, not understanding what's happening. Then I'd have to yell at him again to run. He would run, cry, stop, dazed. That happened 3 times. I still don't understand how shock or fear could do that. The animal did not follow us down the trail. The thoughts going through my head, I wouldn't wish on my enemies. It was the only time in my life where I knew I could not protect my children. The buck knife on my hip was no better than a pillow. The moment I told my 7-year-old he might have to take his younger brother's hand, get back to the car as fast as you can, left a scar deeper in my mind than this unexplainable animal. Even though there was no mistaking what I witnessed, it doesn't matter. Trying to explain this to anyone is pointless. I like to think I'm considerably self-aware. I can't understand why my mind is forcing itself to debunk what I saw. I was undoubtedly afraid, but my focus was crystal clear. Kids, safe, at all costs. I was laser focused on my surroundings and what was in it. None of my emotions distorted my vision or made me misinterpret my surroundings. Story 2. I encountered what I believe was Bigfoot on 2 separate occasions. My first experience was when I was young. My parents had me in a very small private Christian school in rural Maine. I had roughly 6 classmates, and only one was my age, the teacher's son. One day, we were running around outside racing, playing with rocks, and things of that nature. Normal 7 to 10-year-old boy stuff. Now, out back of the church, there was a very large clearing, which I assumed at the time was to make room for additions, but me and my buddy, we'll call him Josh, always liked to mess around back there, as the earth was extremely uneven. little divots to hide in, and plenty of rocks to flip over and discover salamanders. On this particularly warm afternoon, we were nearing the tree line when we both smelled something foul. We scoured the area for potential dead animals and found next to nothing. As we neared the center of the field, Josh stopped in his tracks and just stared at the tree line, frozen with fear. I called out his name a couple times, and he just turned and ran, telling me to run. I looked in the direction that made him flee, and saw a very tall, upright human figure walking between trees with its face following me. Hair covered its body. I too took off and never went back. Our parents, of course, said we saw a bear. We know what we saw was no bear. Fast forward to 2012. I've since married, have a child, and have enlisted in the US Navy. I was stationed in the Pacific Northwest and have heard the stories, but I really heeded none of the warnings. My wife scoured the internet one weekend for an easy hike. Our daughter wasn't really old enough to walk, so we decided to bring a stroller. I'm going to be honest, I don't remember the exact location, but I do know that it was off the beaten path. We pulled up to the trailhead and saw a couple of people very swiftly get in their vehicle, almost panicked, and speed off. My wife and I dismissed it as they were in a hurry to get somewhere, so we continued business as usual. We began down the path and immediately started getting an uneasy feeling. Mutually, we agreed audibly that something was off. About 5 minutes into this actually rough hike, the stroller was a bad decision, we heard a blood-curdling scream which sounded like a woman, but not quite human, deep in the woods to our left. My wife and I looked at each other frantic. Time to go. I grabbed my daughter, and my wife grabbed the stroller, and we took off. We heard the scream moments later, but this time it was much closer, and now we were hearing something very large trudging through the woods, but we couldn't see anything. We slowed down to listen, trying desperately to keep our location hidden, despite the fact that we felt like we were being watched. Now, the thing moving in the woods was coming from different directions without warning. We could not pinpoint it as to keep our eyes in that direction. As we paused briefly, again it seemed the woods stood still. No sounds, not even birds chirping. We felt like this was our opportunity to barrel out of there. We took off. We were close to the trailhead anyway. Not seconds after our borderline sprint, a massive boulder, probably 100 pounds, launched across the trail as if by slingshot, bouncing off the massive trees. We tried to see where it came from, as there were no hills, but to no avail. We kept moving, and only noticed the downed tree that was in the walking path that wasn't there previously after we got into our vehicle and took off. Were these humans messing with us? My wife and I didn't wait to find out. It was terrifying, and I doubt we'll ever really know the truth.